blood in the wind. Hook, 5 lines in the dead of night. A distant village awoke to screams. Shadows moved in the mist, not human, not alive. People thought zombies were just movie monsters, but the blood on the ground was real, and the bodies were gone. The government called in Captain America. Story: the village lay far from the city, tucked between rolling fields and a dark forest that locals rarely entered. It was the kind of place where nothing ever happened until that night. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, and the air was heavy with the scent of rain. Dogs barked in the distance, their howls echoing off the hills. Then came a first scream. It was sharp, desperate, and cut through the night like a blade. Lights flickered on in small houses. Doors creaked open. People stepped out, clutching lanterns and flashlights, their breath visible in the cold air. Through the mist, shapes began to emerge. At first, they looked like travelers, hunched, slow-moving figures. But as they drew closer, the lantern light revealed the truth. Their skin was pale and torn, their eyes clouded and lifeless. Their mouths hung open, dripping with dark saliva. The smell hit next, the stench of rot and old graves. Someone shouted, "It's not real. This can't be real." But the figures kept coming. The first attack was sudden. A man at the front of the crowd was dragged down, his scream cut short. Blood sprayed across the dirt road. Panic erupted. People ran in every direction, but the attackers were everywhere. They moved with unnatural speed, their clawed hands tearing through flesh. Within minutes, the village was a nightmare. Doors were smashed in, windows shattered. The air was filled with the sound of tearing wood, breaking bones, and muffled cries. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it was over. Silence. The mist thickened, swallowing the streets. When it cleared, the attackers were gone, and so were the villagers. Not a single body remained. Only blood, smeared across walls and pooling in the dirt. By morning, the place was swarming with police. TV crews set up cameras, broadcasting live to a horrified nation. Forensic teams in white suits combed through the wreckage. They found blood samples but no bodies. DNA confirmed the blood belonged to the villagers. But without corpses, there was no explanation. The government, under pressure from the public, called in the Avengers. But only one answered the call: Captain America. He arrived in a black military transport, stepping out with his shield strapped to his back. His eyes scanned the scene, taking in every detail. He spoke briefly with the police chief, then walked the streets alone, his boots crunching on broken glass. No footprints, no drag marks, no signs of where the bodies had gone. It was as if the dead had simply walked away. That night, it happened again. Another village. This time, Captain America was ready. He stood in the center of the main street, shield in hand, as the mist rolled in. The first zombie emerged from the fog, a woman in a torn dress, her jaw hanging at an unnatural angle. Behind her came dozens more, their eyes locked on him. They charged. The first blow rang out as his shield smashed into a zombie's chest, sending it flying into a wall. But instead of staying down, the creature dissolved into black mist and vanished. Another lunged at him. Same result. No matter how hard he hit, they didn't die. They simply disappeared, only to reappear seconds later, attacking from another angle. The fight raged for minutes, but it was hopeless. The villagers screamed as they were dragged into the fog. By dawn, the second village was gone. Captain America stood in the ruins, his uniform torn, his shield dented. He had never faced an enemy like this. For the next few days, he stayed silent. He didn't return to the Avengers. He didn't speak to the press. Instead, he waited. He knew the attackers would strike again, and this time, he would follow them. When the third attack came, he was ready. He moved through the chaos like a shadow, staying just far enough behind the horde to avoid detection. The zombies didn't move randomly. They were heading somewhere. Through the forest, over rocky hills, deeper into the wilderness than any road reached. Finally, they arrived at a mountain hidden in the heart of the forest. Its peak was shrouded in clouds, and its base was surrounded by jagged rocks. The zombies disappeared into a narrow cave at the mountain's base. Captain America didn't follow, not yet. He marked the location on his GPS and retreated. He needed daylight. The next morning, he returned. The forest was eerily quiet, the air heavy with the smell of damp earth. He climbed the rocky slope to the cave entrance. Inside, the air was cold and stale. The walls were covered in strange markings, symbols he didn't recognize. Deeper inside, he found a massive underground chamber. At its center stood a man, or something that had once been a man. His skin was gray and cracked, his eyes glowing faintly. He wore tattered robes decorated with golden patterns, and his head was wrapped in an ancient Egyptian headdress. But his mouth was twisted into a grin that revealed sharp, blackened teeth. "You've come far, soldier," the figure said, his voice echoing unnaturally. "But you'll go no further." Before Captain America could react, the figure moved faster than any human. His hand struck the shield, sending it flying across the chamber. A second blow sent Captain America crashing into the wall. Pain exploded in his ribs. The figure stepped closer. "I'm older than your nation, older than your world's heroes. You cannot kill what is already dead." Captain America rolled to his feet, grabbing his shield. He swung, but the figure caught the blow with one hand and hurled him across the room again. Realizing he couldn't win, Captain America used the shield to block a final strike, then dove toward the cave entrance. He ran through the tunnels, the figure's laughter echoing behind him. Outside, gasping for breath, he stumbled into the forest. That's when he saw the old man. The stranger stood leaning on a wooden staff, his eyes sharp despite his age. "You've met him," the old man said. "The necromancer." Captain America nodded. "Who is he?" "A sorcerer from 1,000 years ago. He was buried in a tomb deep in this mountain. But dark magic has awakened him. Now he raises the dead to serve him. Then tell me how to stop him." The old man's gaze hardened. "There is only one way, but it's the path of death. Are you willing to take it?" Captain America didn't hesitate. "If it saves humanity, yes." The old man nodded slowly. "There is a book, an ancient spell book. With its magic, you can destroy the zombies and bind the necromancer forever. But lies in a tomb in Egypt, guarded by things far worse than the dead." Captain America tightened his grip on the shield. "Then I'm going to Egypt. Tomb of the 1,000 Shadows." The flight to Egypt was silent. Captain America sat in the dimly lit cargo bay of a military transport, his shield resting against his leg. The old man's words echoed in his mind. "There is a book, an ancient spell book. With its magic, you can destroy the zombies and bind the necromancer forever." Outside the small window, the desert stretched endlessly beneath the rising sun. He knew this mission was unlike any he had faced before. This wasn't Hydra or alien invaders or rogue super soldiers. This was something older, darker, something that didn't play by the rules of the living. The transport touched down on a remote airstrip far from Cairo. Waiting for him was a single guide, a wiry man named Kareem, his face weathered by years of desert wind. "You're looking for the tomb of the 1,000 Shadows," Kareem said in a low voice as they drove in an old Jeep across the sand. "Most people think it's a myth. Those who go looking for it don't come back." "I'm not most people," Captain America replied, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Hours later, the Jeep stopped at the base of a jagged cliff. The sun was sinking, painting the desert in blood-red light. At the cliff's base was a narrow fissure, barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through. "This is as far as I go," Kareem said, handing him a torch. "Inside, the air is cursed. The shadows move on their own. If you hear whispers, don't answer." Captain America nodded, then stepped into the darkness. The fissure opened into a vast underground passage. The walls were carved with hieroglyphs depicting scenes of war, sacrifice, and strange creatures that looked disturbingly like the zombies he had fought. The air was thick and stale, carrying the faint scent of decay. As he moved deeper, the torchlight flickered. Shadows seemed to stretch toward him, curling like fingers. He tightened his grip on the shield. The first guardian appeared without warning, a towering figure of stone, shaped like an ancient warrior with the head of a jackal. Its eyes glowed faintly, and with a grinding roar, it stepped down from its pedestal. Captain America charged, shield raised. The Guardian swung a massive stone blade, the impact rattling his bones. He ducked under the strike, slamming the shield into the Guardian's knee. Cracks spiderwebbed through the stone, but the creature didn't slow. The fight was brutal. Every blow from the Guardian felt like being hit by a wrecking ball. Finally, Captain America used the narrow walls to his advantage, dodging at the last second, so the Guardian's blade lodged deep into the rock. With a powerful throw, he hurled his shield into the creature's head, shattering it into rubble. Breathing hard, he pressed on. The passage sloped downward, the air growing colder. He entered a chamber lit by a strange, green glow. At its center was a pool of still water, and beyond it, a massive stone door covered in golden symbols. As he stepped toward the pool, the water rippled, and something rose from its depths. It was human-shaped, but its skin was pale and translucent, its eyes black voids. Its voice was a whisper that seemed to come from inside his skull. "Turn back, or join the dead." Captain America didn't answer. He leapt across the pool, landing hard on the other side. The creature lunged after him, but he slammed the shield into the stone door, triggering a mechanism. The door rumbled open, and a blast of cold air swept through the chamber. The creature hissed and sank back into the water. Beyond the door lay the tomb itself. The ceiling soared high above, lost in darkness. Rows of stone coffins lined the walls, each carved with the likeness of a warrior or king. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat a pedestal, and on it the book. It was bound in black leather, its cover etched with golden runes that seemed to shift when he looked at them. The air around it felt heavy, charged with power. He approached cautiously, every instinct on edge. That's when the second Guardian struck. This one wasn't stone, it was flesh, or what was left of it. A mummified warrior, its body wrapped in ancient bandages, its eyes burning with unnatural light. It moved with terrifying speed, its curved blade flashing in the torchlight. The fight was faster, deadlier. The mummy's strikes were precise, each one aimed to kill. Captain America blocked and countered, but the creature seemed to anticipate his every move. Finally, he feinted left, then drove his shield into the mummy's chest with all his strength. The impact sent it crashing into a stone coffin, shattering the lid. The mummy didn't rise again. He grabbed the book. The moment his hands touched it, the runes flared with golden light, and a deep, resonant hum filled the chamber. The coffins around him began to shake. Lids slid open. Pale hands reached out. Dozens of mummified warriors began to rise. Captain America didn't hesitate. He sprinted for the door, the book clutched under one arm, his shield deflecting blows from every side. The undead swarmed after him, their footsteps echoing like thunder. He burst through the stone door, slamming it shut behind him. The green-eyed water creature shrieked from the pool, but he leapt over it without slowing. The passage seemed longer on the way out. Shadows lunged at him from the walls. Whispers filled his ears, promising power, threatening death. He ignored them all. Finally, he saw the faint light of the fissure ahead. He squeezed through, stumbling into the desert night. Kareem was waiting, eyes wide. "You found it," the guide said, staring at the book. "I found it," Captain America replied, his voice grim. "Now I'm going to end this." They drove through the night, the desert wind howling around them. In the distance, the first light of dawn touched the horizon. Somewhere far away, in the hidden mountain, the necromancer stirred. His eyes snapped open, glowing with rage. He knew the book had been taken, and he knew who had taken it. The siege of the hidden mountain. The journey back from Egypt was a blur of sand, steel, and restless thoughts. Captain America sat in the dim belly of the transport plane, the ancient spellbook strapped securely in a reinforced case beside him. Every time he glanced at it, the golden runes on its cover seemed to shift, as if alive. He could almost hear faint whispers curling out from the leather, voices from centuries past, urging him to hurry, or warning him to turn back. The old man's words replayed in his mind. "With this book, you can destroy the zombies and bind the necromancer forever. But the mountain is his domain. There he's strongest." The plane touched down at a remote airfield near the forest. The air was colder here, heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. The sun was sinking behind the jagged peaks, casting long shadows across the land. Somewhere beyond those ridges lay the hidden mountain and the necromancer. Captain America moved fast. He traveled light, carrying only his shield, the book, and enough gear to survive the night. The forest swallowed him quickly, its towering trees blotting out the last of the daylight. Hours passed. The deeper he went, the quieter it became. No birds, no wind, just the crunch of his boots on the forest floor. Then, faintly, he heard it, the sound of shuffling feet. He crouched low, peering through the undergrowth. A column of zombies was moving through the trees, their movements slow but purposeful. They weren't hunting. They were marching toward the mountain. He followed, keeping his distance. The moon rose, silver light spilling through the branches. The zombies moved in eerie silence, their heads all tilted slightly forward, as if listening to some distant command. Finally, the trees thinned and the mountain loomed ahead. Its base was ringed with jagged rocks, and a single narrow path wound upward toward a black opening in the stone. Captain America's pulse quickened. This was it. He waited until the last of the zombies had entered the cave, then moved forward. The air grew colder with every step. The entrance was guarded by two massive statues, warriors in ancient armor, their faces hidden behind helmets. As he passed between them, their stone eyes seemed to follow him. Inside, the tunnel sloped downward, lit by flickering torches. Strange symbols were carved into the walls, their shapes twisting in the torchlight. The deeper he went, the stronger the whispers became. They weren't coming from the book now. They were coming from the mountain itself. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber. At its center stood the necromancer. He was taller than Captain America remembered, his body a grotesque fusion of man and corpse. His skin was stretched tight over bone, his eyes burning with green fire. The Egyptian headdress still crowned his head, but now it was torn and stained with blood. Around him, dozens of zombies stood perfectly still, their heads bowed. "You've returned," the necromancer said, his voice echoing like 1,000 voices speaking at once. "And you brought me my book." Captain America tightened his grip on the shield. "Not for you." The necromancer's grin widened. "You think you can use it? You don't even know how to open it." With a flick of his hand, the zombies surged forward. Captain America moved like lightning, his shield smashing into the first wave. Bones cracked, bodies flew, but just like before, they dissolved into mist and reformed seconds later. He fought his way toward the necromancer, but the horde was endless. The necromancer raised his arms, and the ground itself began to split. From the cracks, skeletal hands clawed their way up, dragging more undead into the fight. Captain America knew brute force wouldn't win here. He needed the book. He slammed his shield into the ground, creating a shockwave that knocked the nearest zombies back, then yanked the case open. The book's runes flared to life, bathing the chamber in golden light. The necromancer's smile faltered. "No!" Captain America flipped the book open. The pages were covered in symbols that seemed to writhe and shift, but somehow he understood them. The words burned in his mind, ancient and powerful. He began to speak. The effect was immediate. The zombies froze, their heads snapping toward him. The necromancer roared, the sound shaking the walls. "Silence him!" The horde surged again, but now the golden light from the book seared their flesh. They shrieked and fell back, smoke rising from their bodies. The necromancer lunged forward, moving faster than the eye could follow. His clawed hand closed around Captain America's throat, lifting him off the ground. "You dare use my magic against me?" Captain America gasped for air, his vision blurring. But he kept reading, forcing the words out between clenched teeth. The golden light intensified, wrapping around both of them. The necromancer screamed, his skin blistering under the glow. He hurled Captain America across the chamber, but the book stayed in his hands. The zombies began to crumble, their bodies collapsing into piles of ash. The necromancer staggered, his form flickering between solid and shadow. "You cannot kill me," he roared. "I am eternal." Captain America rose to his feet, blood on his lip. Not today. He charged, shield first, slamming into the necromancer with all his strength. The impact drove the sorcerer back toward the center of the chamber, where a massive stone sarcophagus lay. The golden light from the book flared one final time, and the sarcophagus lid slid open. A vortex of swirling darkness erupted from within, pulling at everything in the room. The necromancer's eyes widened in fear. No! The vortex dragged him in, his screams echoing until they were swallowed by the dark. The lid slammed shut, and the chamber fell silent. Captain America stood there, chest heaving, the book still glowing faintly in his hands. The zombies were gone. The air was still, but he knew it wasn't over. The old man had said the book could bind the necromancer, not destroy him. Somewhere deep inside that sarcophagus, the sorcerer was waiting, and he would wait as long as it took. The necromancer's whisper. The mountain was silent. Too silent. Captain America stood in the vast chamber, the sarcophagus sealed, the golden light of the spellbook fading to a dull glow. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, his knuckles raw from the fight. The air was thick with the smell of dust and burnt flesh, the remnants of the undead army that had crumbled to ash. For a moment, he allowed himself to believe it was over. But then he heard it, a faint sound, almost too soft to notice. A whisper. It didn't come from the walls, or the air, or even the book. It came from inside his head. You cannot bind me forever, soldier. His grip on the shield tightened. He turned toward the sarcophagus, its stone surface now covered in faint cracks that hadn't been there moments ago. The golden seal glowed weakly, flickering like a dying flame. The old man's warning echoed in his mind. The book can bind him, but only for a time. The mountain is his prison and his throne. Captain America knew he couldn't stay here. The longer he remained, the more the necromancer's presence pressed against his thoughts, probing for weakness. He closed the book, strapped it to his back, and began the long climb out of the mountain. Outside, the forest was still. The moon hung low, casting silver light over the trees. But the silence wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that comes before storm. By the time he reached the edge of the forest, dawn was breaking. A black SUV waited on the dirt road, 2 government agents stepping out as he approached. "Sir, we've been tracking your signal," one of them said. "The president wants a full debrief." Now, Captain America climbed into the vehicle without a word. The debrief took place in a secure underground facility. The room was bare except for a table, 2 chairs, and a bank of monitors showing satellite images of the mountain. "You're telling us this thing is still alive?" the lead official asked, his voice tight. "Alive isn't the right word," Captain America replied. "He's contained. For now. But the seal won't hold forever." The official exchanged a glance with his aide. "Then we destroy the mountain. Level it. Bury him deeper." "It won't work," Captain America said flatly. "He's not bound to the rock. He's bound to the magic. If the seal breaks, he'll walk out of the rubble like it's nothing." The room fell silent. Finally, the official leaned forward. "Then what do you suggest?" Captain America looked at the book resting on the table between them. "We find a way to end him. Permanently." That night, he stayed in the facility's secure quarters. The book sat on the desk, its runes faintly glowing in the dark. He tried to sleep, but the whispers returned. "You think you've won. You've only delayed the inevitable. I see your world, soldier. I see its cities, its people. They will all serve me." He sat up, sweat on his brow. The voice was stronger now, clearer. It wasn't just in his head, it was in the room. The shadows in the corners seemed to shift. The temperature dropped. The book's glow pulsed in time with the whispers. Captain America stood, shield in hand. "Show yourself." The shadows twisted, forming a vague human shape. 2 green eyes flared in the darkness. "You cannot kill me," the necromancer's voice hissed. "But I can reach you." Even here, the shadow lunged. Captain America swung the shield, but it passed through the figure like smoke. The green eyes vanished, and the room was silent again. He knew what this meant. The necromancer's power was growing, even inside his prison. The seal was weakening faster than the old man had predicted. The next morning, the facility's alarms blared. Captain America was already moving before the announcement came over the intercom. Breach detected. Sector 7 perimeter. He sprinted down the corridor, agents falling in beside him. They burst through the outer doors into the cold morning air and froze. A wave of zombies was pouring out of the forest, their movements faster, more coordinated than before. Their eyes glowed faint green. He's controlling them from inside the mountain, Captain America said grimly. The agents opened fire, but the bullets barely slowed the horde. Captain America waded into the fight, shields smashing through rotting skulls, boots driving into chests. But for every zombie that fell, 2 more took its place. The battle raged for nearly an hour before the last of the undead crumbled to ash. The ground was littered with shell casings and blackened remains. Captain America stood in the middle of it all, breathing hard. He knew this was just a test. The necromancer was probing their defenses, seeing how far his reach could extend. And if he could send an army this far from his prison, it was only a matter of time before he broke free entirely. That night, Captain America met with the old man again. They sat by a fire deep in the forest, the book resting between them. The seal is failing, Captain America said. He's already sending his army beyond the mountain. The old man's face was grim. Then the final battle is coming sooner than we thought. I need to know how to kill him, Captain America said. The old man hesitated. There is a way, but it will cost you everything. Captain America didn't flinch. Tell me. The old man leaned forward. The necromancer's soul is bound to a relic, a black crystal hidden deep within a mountain. Destroy it, and you destroy him. But the crystal is guarded by the deadliest of his creations. And once you enter that chamber, there is no coming back. Captain America looked into the flames. Then I guess I'm not coming back. Far away, in the heart of the mountain, the necromancer stood before the black crystal. His skeletal fingers traced its surface, and the green light in his eyes flared. Come to me, soldier, he whispered. Come and die. The last stand. The forest was darker than it had ever been. Captain America stood at its edge, the hidden mountain looming ahead like a black tooth against the night sky. The air was heavy, charged with something unnatural, the kind of pressure that made the skin crawl and the heart race. The old man's words echoed in his mind. The necromancer's soul is bound to a black crystal. Destroy it, and you destroy him. But once you enter that chamber, there is no coming back. He adjusted the straps on his shield, feeling the familiar weight settle against his arm. The ancient spell book was secured to his back, its runes glowing faintly in the dark. Every step toward the mountain felt like walking into the jaws of a predator. The path was no longer empty. Zombies lined the trail, standing perfectly still, their heads turning in unison as he approached. Their eyes glowed brighter than before, not the dull green of the past, but a blazing emerald fire. The necromancer was waiting. The first zombie lunged, and the fight began. Captain America moved like a storm, shields smashing skulls, boots breaking bones. But these weren't the same mindless husks he'd fought before. They were faster, stronger, and they didn't dissolve into mist when struck. They fought like soldiers, coordinated and relentless. He pushed forward, every blow a step closer to the cave. His muscles burned, his breath came in ragged bursts, but he didn't slow. The mountain's mouth yawned ahead, and with a final surge, he broke through the line and plunged inside. The tunnels were alive. Shadows twisted along the walls, forming faces that screamed silently as he passed. The whispers were deafening now, the necromancer's voice threading through them all. You've come to die, soldier, and you will. The deeper he went, the colder it became. Frost formed on the stone, his breath turning to mist. The air smelled of old blood and something far worse, the scent of magic that had been festering for centuries. Finally, he reached the chamber. It was vast, the ceiling lost in darkness. At its center, on a raised platform, stood the black crystal. It was taller than a man, its surface jagged and pulsing with green light. The air around it shimmered, as if reality itself was bending. And in front of it stood the necromancer. He was no longer half man, half corpse. He was something else entirely, a towering figure of bone and shadow, his eyes blazing like twin suns. The Egyptian headdress was gone, replaced by a crown of twisted metal. His voice shook the chamber. "You brought my book. Good. You'll die with it in your hands." The battle began instantly. The necromancer moved with impossible speed, his claws slicing through the air. Captain America blocked with his shield, the impact sending shockwaves up his arm. He countered with a strike to the ribs, but the blow passed through the sorcerer's shadow flesh like smoke. The necromancer laughed, the sound echoing from every wall. "You can't touch me, soldier, but I can touch you." A blast of green energy erupted from his hands, slamming into Captain America and hurling him across the chamber. He hit the stone hard, the breath knocked from his lungs. But he got up. He opened the spell book, the runes flaring to life. The necromancer's grin faltered as Captain America began to read aloud, the ancient words burning in the air. The golden light spread, pushing back the shadows. The necromancer roared and summoned his final army. The ground split, and skeletal warriors clawed their way up, their armor blackened, their weapons dripping with green fire. Captain America fought like a man possessed. Shield strikes shattered skulls, kicks sent warriors flying, but he never stopped reading. The golden light grew brighter, wrapping around him like armor. The necromancer lunged, but this time the light burned him. His form flickered, his claws recoiling. Captain America pressed forward, driving him back toward the crystal. The book's pages turned on their own, the final incantation glowing brighter than the sun. Captain America shouted the last words, and the golden light exploded outward, slamming into the crystal. The chamber shook violently. Cracks spiderwebbed across the crystal's surface, green light spilling out in blinding bursts. The necromancer screamed, his body unraveling into streams of shadow that were sucked toward the breaking stone. "No, I am eternal." The crystal shattered. The explosion was silent, a flash of pure light that swallowed everything. The necromancer's scream was cut off, his form torn apart and scattered into nothing. The skeletal warriors collapsed into dust. The shadows fled the walls. When the light faded, the crystal was gone. The platform was empty. Captain America stood alone in the silent chamber, the spellbook still glowing faintly in his hands. He knew the necromancer was gone, not bound, not imprisoned, but truly destroyed. The mountain groaned, the walls beginning to crack. Rocks fell from the ceiling. He turned and ran, sprinting through the collapsing tunnels, leaping over fissures as the ground split beneath him. He burst out into the night just as the mountain's peak caved in, a cloud of dust and stone billowing into the sky. The forest shook, then fell silent. It was over. Days later, the government held a press conference. They called it a containment operation, never mentioning the undead army or the sorcerer who had nearly conquered the living. Captain America stood in the shadows, watching from a distance. The old man approached, leaning on his staff. "You've done what no one else could," he said. Captain America shook his head. "I did what had to be done." The old man smiled faintly. "The world will never know how close it came, but I will." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the sun set over the forest. Then Captain America turned and walked away, the spell book in his pack, its runes now dark and silent. Somewhere deep in the earth, the dust of the black crystal lay scattered, and with it, the last trace of the necromancer.